First of all, we'll talk about Rasmus Sandin. He's put his time into the OHL, has he not?
Yeah, he played a year with the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds and had a very good year, 45 points, and was definitely on the radar of a number of teams. And as we know, got selected 29th overall by the Leafs. And Kyle Dubas admitted at the draft in Dallas that since he was a former GM of the Greyhounds and watched them being from Sault Ste. Marie, watched them religiously, so it sort of gave him a little leg up in terms of seeing a player all the time and being recognizing the quality of Sandin as a defenseman. So, but the interesting thing is that at the draft, I asked him, says, what do you think the disposition of Sandin is going to be? Because as a player loaned from the SHL, and he had a year left on his contract with Rogel, either he could go back to Sweden and play and complete his contractual agreement with Rogel, or he could go back to Sault Ste. Marie for another year, or as Timothy Liljegren did with the Marlies last year as an 18-year-old coming right out of the draft, he could play in the AHL. And, if he all of a sudden blew everybody's doors off, yes, conceivably he could play for the Leafs, but that's, he's 18 years old. So let's keep our things in perspective. Well, a report came out from one of my colleagues at Sporting News, Marie Pam, that the likelihood of him going back to Sault Ste. Marie is virtually nil. So the options are down to two, which is AHL or SHL. And knowing and tracking what Sandin has done over the summer, he's playing in a tournament. And it may be over with by now, but he was playing in a tournament last week with Rogel. His brother plays for Rogel, and he will be over for training camp. But if the Leafs believe that he is close, to be NHL ready, then he may follow Liljegren's footsteps and play with the Marlies. But if they think he needs a year or two of seasoning, then he may stay with the SHL. So it's going to be interesting how it plays out in the evaluation process when it comes to Sandin with the Leafs.
Look, it's a draft and follow situation, right, Mike? No reason to get too eager. He's in the fold. He's got a contract. You have defensemen right now who are expecting to produce, and that we need, we need professionalism from someone like Rasmus Sandin. Your time will come. In the meantime, do what you got to do to become a better professional, whether that's 10 minutes on the other side of the Gardner or 9 hours across the Atlantic. So be it.
Well, I think what you just said is the key point. Depending on whether he's closer to being ready than not, I think the main factor is going to be playing time. And if you look at the roster of the Marlies, conceivably, I mean, we assume that it's either going to be 7 or 8 defensemen that make the Leafs, and we know the top 5 for sure, and then probably Connor Carrick is the number 6, and then it could be any one of a number of things as a 7 or 8 defenseman, and they may only be able to keep 7 if they have to keep 3 goaltenders, like I mentioned in a column earlier this week about having to keep Garrett Sparks on the roster because they don't want to lose him on waivers. But if that's the case, then you're talking, for example, Martin Marincin, Liljegren, Vincent Laverde, Justin Hall, Callie Rosen, Andreas Borgman. I can keep going. And there's a lot of defensemen. And one of the things that if Sandin is going to be on the Marlies, they want him to play. And if he's going to play 10 minutes a night, like you were just saying, that's not good enough. And you're not going to send a first-round pick down to the ECHL. So it's either going to be he plays minutes with the Marlies or he plays probably top pairing minutes with Rogel. So I think that's going to be the determining factor.
There are a lot of things about his game that really get us excited and want to see more. And when you have him put in a situation where he can elevate his own abilities by taking on more minutes, taking a bit more of a leadership role out on the ice, that's where we get the opportunity to see a player with lots of skill advance their own abilities on their own in a lot of ways, as opposed to, here's somebody that can be compartmentalized, here's somebody that can be slotted, and here's somebody that we have to really, really micromanage in a setting where there are a lot of other players at the same level or even higher. And perhaps he gets a bit lost in the shuffle.
Well, the one thing I can compliment and give plaudits to when it comes to the Leafs in terms of the last few years has been their patience in terms of not advancing players until they think that they're ready. And if you notice, like William Nylander was selected in the 2014 draft. He didn't come over until January of 2015. He played half a year in the SHL. He played over a full year in the AHL before he made a debut at the end of the 15-16 season. Mitch Marner played the extra year in junior. They kept Dermott down after his junior career for I think a year and a half. I mean, they made sure that these players got a taste of professional hockey, knew what it was to be a professional, knew what their responsibilities were, and then they were better prepared when they were called up to handle the NHL. And I think you get a much more complete player, and you don't have somebody who's in awe of the situation if you call them up at 18 years old. Now, there are obviously exceptions to the rule, like Austin Matthews, but Austin Matthews was the number one overall pick, and everybody knew he was different. So you can't follow the same blueprint all the time, but in general, I mean, they've been patient with Liljegren. He's probably going to play another full year in the AHL. They're going to be patient with Sandin and with some of their low round draft picks, guys like Andreas Janssen, guys like Pierre Engvall. They are letting them play extra time in Sweden, letting them come over, play a year or two here. Proper development is the key to these players being successful.
The Leafs have lots of prospects. They're all on their own paths, all hoping to achieve the ultimate goal of making the NHL at their own pace. And that is certainly okay because there are enough guys at the NHL level who can carry the day and who can bear the weight of the expectations of the largest fan base in hockey.